Grant Denyer now.
It's Grant Denyer.
The gold logie this year. Oh my God, it's Grant Denyer.
And our mum, Shezzy Denyer. She's really crazy.
It's all true.
It's All True, the podcast with Grant and Shezzy Denyer.
I don't know why
I don't think I can change it. I'm sorry, guys. No. I know you're not in it, George, and I know it slags you off as being crazy, Shezzy. But I just like the tune too much.
It is. It's pretty funky. I like it.
There should be an extended cut, maybe like a Bohemian Rhapsody. Now it's like 8 minutes long. We'll do an It's All True opener that goes for 15 minutes long.
And then we don't need to talk as much in each episode, that's probably, it's efficiency is what it is.
It's a bit of a struggle to not
How
talk
about a 15-minute opener and a 15-minute closer?
Yeah, now you're talking. Then we only have to talk for 15 minutes and you've got I don't know what the maths are now.
What's the benefit of
45
that,
minutes.
though, when I have so much that I need to say?
Say it faster.
Double speed. I'll speed it up in post.
How are you, brother? You good?
Going really good, guys. I had my little self-care session yesterday, so the hair's fluffy once again. The skin's nice and smooth.
Ooh,
You
nice.
are looking delicious. Look at that glistening skin. It's just like
It looks great.
like dolphin skin. It's so smooth and porpoisey.
Thank you. Porpoisey. I've never been described that way, but I appreciate it.
Well, dolphins, they slip through the water because they're so silky, and your skin looks silky.
And they blow a lot of spray too.
They sure. Well, you did
wow.
say you had a new girlfriend, so that's a bit of a peek behind the curtain, everyone. George is loved up.
Oh, we will come back.
I know it was a few weeks ago, but I love the new kind of photo shoot session that you popped up onto your Insta GD.
Yes.
It was a thirst trap for people like you, and you were straight on it with a hot face emoji, just going.
Did you see my message I sent you?
Hang on, which pic are you talking about? Not the one I just posted today.
No, the
it
one
was
you
the
are
few-
talking about.
Yeah, a few weeks ago. By the time this episode comes out. Well, that's confusing, isn't it?
Wow.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
Mate, look,
Bit of a peek behind the curtain. We try to be clever.
time is
And it
it's a
hasn't
man-made
worked.
construct, guys. Don't get caught up when this was recorded and when you're listening to it. You mean the hot picture of me standing there in my nice suit, the white jacket and black pants?
That's the exact one. I slid into those DMs straight away with some stuff that I look forward to you seeing.
Have you added to it? Oh, I can't wait to get on board.
All right. Well, sorry to hurry this whole love fest along, but we've got a guest on today that has been waiting in our waiting room. Wonder what our waiting room is like.
Yeah, I think it's a lot of red drapes, maybe a lava lamp just bubbling away in the corner.
So let's get them
With
in.
a genuine Fakari rug on the
my
ground.
God.
They're a thing. Should we bring him in?
Yeah, let's bring him in here.
Well, I can start his intro so we can sort of, while his internet sort of connects, that sort of gets us going. And then he'll realise that we're going for real.
Well, I think he's been recording all day, and so he's probably ready to leave.
There we are.
Hey!
There he is. He's prolific in this space. He's from the You Project podcast, which is also on the Nova Network, of which you are listening to. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Craig Harper.
Oh, g'day, you bloody champions. I've got a bit of deja vu going on. What's that about?
Because we recorded your podcast today, my friend. That's why. Don't ruin the illusion. We're professionals. Now, just shut up a second while I just give our audience some background information, because if you haven't heard of him, you have been living under an absolute rock. He's one of Australia's leading presenters, writers and educators in the areas of health, high performance, resilience, self-management, leadership, corporate change, communication, stress management, addiction and personal transformation. We normally just talk about vaginas and racing cars. This guy is an intellectual. So good to have someone smart finally on this podcast, my friend. Welcome.
It's going to be
I
an
want to talk about
intervention.
vaginas and racing cars. Let's do that.
And that brings us to the end of today's podcast. Thanks for listening. Now, we do talk about, we got George Sargent with us, our lovely third wheel. He's with us at
Craig.
the moment.
Hi, George.
The man with the moustache. We do normally talk about very varied topics. Like we might have a medium on one week. We might have a ghost specialist The next week we could have someone. Well, I don't know what's another left field category that we normally
We
have.
spoke about psychedelics.
Oh yeah,
Use in medicine
we
the
were
other
tripping
day.
balls one week in a podcast. So yeah, we cover some ground. But having you on this podcast is a bit of a highlight for us because normally you do massive traffic. So we hope just by having you on our podcast, we gain a few more as well.
Smart listeners.
Well, you definitely gained a few this morning with me because we haven't put it up yet. We're going to put it up in a couple of days, but my audience will fall in love with you. So I feel like I did you a service and me a disservice because you were too bloody good for my own show. But anyway, that'll teach me
Oh, that's very sweet.
what happens when you have talented, charismatic bloody people on your show.
Yeah.
Shoot yourself in the foot.
We podcast once a week, and we could barely be bothered to do that. Who on earth does one a day, for Christ's sake?
Well, can I really be a moron and tell you that I'm doing 2 a day starting from tomorrow? So
What?
I'm actually launching a new show which starts tomorrow called Life. And this is not a pre-planned promo, but it's just an 8-minute coaching session per day. Yeah. So from there, at the minute, I'm recording 2 a day every day.
Is it called Life?
Putting
because-
up to 2 a day. Yeah.
Is it called Life because that's what you're saying goodbye to? Because you'll no longer have one?
That's it. That's ironic, isn't it? Yeah, but it's very different. So it's not an interview-based show. There's no guest or host, co-host, or it's just me banging on about one topic or idea for about 8 minutes just to help people get in the zone for their day.
For some reason, I want to ask you, do you really have 5 motorbikes? This is very off topic, but
I have 4.
4.
I have 4, but well, you never know. You never know. I mean, I'm sure your husband's had way more vehicles than he ever possibly needs. You don't try and rationalize it. Don't think about it too much, Shezzy, because I'm pretty logical with most things except that. But I just put that out there.
Well, we've all got our vices, you know what? And you're an addiction specialist. So what would you diagnose yourself as having then? If you have a weakness in one area, is that a flaw of your character, or are we all allowed to have that one area where we overindulge?
Yeah. So for me, it's like something that I allow myself to do. Like I'm pretty boring in other ways, but I love motorbikes. And so I just let myself do that. I'm not out of control with it, although I did, Grant, you will like this. I bought a motorbike recently called a Rocket 3R, which is a 2.5 litre, 2,500 cc bike, which nobody needs, and does 0 to 100 in 2 seconds. And I think around Hampton, where the speed limit is 40, where I live, it's paramount that I get that.
Yeah.
So now
What's
that I
first
say that
gear
out
like?
loud, I do have issues, yeah. Just, I'm a work in progress.
That is bloody quick. Like we had a car that somebody lent us for a bit and it went 0 to 100 in 30 seconds, was it?
No, that's very slow. A truck would do that.
Okay, yeah.
It was 3 seconds, but it was a big
that's
SUV.
right.
It was a big, it was an X5 BMW.
And that was quick. In fact, that was where I nearly lost my license in that car.
It was.
Yeah.
And whenever you take off from the traffic lights, the kids' heads would nearly rip off. Like it was quite funny to watch.
So does that get frustrating that you can't ride it to its full extent?
Nah, not really. I mean, I take my parents live in the country, so I ride up and back a fair bit. And I get out and about, but it's just having it there, which is fun. But yeah, I'm probably not going to buy anything for quite a while now. I think I'm done. But it completely does not make, if you're trying to find the logic in it, Shezzy, don't, because there's no real logic in that. But it's the only thing I blow money on. I will say that. Don't smoke, don't drink, never been drunk, never been high. I don't really party. I'm very boring other than that.
You were responsible for a lot of people's careers in the high performance sport field. So were to have that kind of commitment and to shape other people mentally, where did that come for you? Like when did you discover that you had an ability to think slightly different and shape other people so perfectly into such high performance states?
That's a great question. I've never been asked that question. I've been asked a lot. That's good. So I've always been fascinated with human potential. I've always been mesmerized by the mind. So there's a thing in psychology called metacognition, which is thinking about how we think. I'm fascinated with that. And I'm fascinated with this this space between our external world, situation, circumstance, environment, people, government, weather, events, and our internal world of thought, feelings, emotions, ideas, creativity, joy, pain, goals, values, faith, belief, all that kind of stuff. And I was a morbidly obese kid. So I had a moment in time, and my moment in time was the year 8 swimming sports, where I was about 95, 94 kilos. I was about 5'6" or something. So 4 inches shorter than I am now, and a good 10 kilos plus heavier than I am now. And I was just, through no fault of anyone else's, but I just had this moment in time where I was completely humiliated, and it was all my doing. But it was like Malcolm Gladwell wrote a really good book called The Tipping Point. And I believe that often in life we have a cognitive or an emotional tipping point. And for me, that was a real life-shaping, life-defining moment. And it was a tipping point for me. And I was humiliated because I had to swim and I didn't want to swim, and I had to take my T-shirt off, which I didn't want to, in front of a whole school of kids and parents and teachers. And I stood up there being literally exposed to what felt like a million people. And something happened, and I got home and I went, I'm never, ever going to feel that again. And I went for my first run, and I was 14, and I just started working out, and I just changed my food, and I lost a whole lot of weight in a relatively short time. And the transformation with my body was something, but what it really did was it opened a door in my brain about potential and possibilities. And I realized that even though I didn't have good genetics, right, and I wasn't an athletic kind of kid, I didn't have a lot of potential in that space. But if I could change my mindset and my operating system and my choices and my behaviors, then I could change not only my physiology, but also the way that I saw myself and operated in the world. And so that for me was the starting point of being really, really fascinated with human potential. Part of that is physiology, part of that is psychology.
I listened to
answer.
one of your episodes. I'm getting all like teary now because I'm picturing myself in year 8 having to get in and swim. I listened to one of your podcast episodes, and you spoke about how most people never realize or never reach their potential. And I just found it fascinating listening to how you were saying you were never extraordinary at anything, but you just really learnt the key to kind of pushing yourself. Can you talk about that a little bit? I just found that whole chat really eye-opening.
Like I'm pragmatic and I'm a realist, and the truth is that I'm not super smart. I don't think I'm stupid, but I'm certainly not a genius. I'm not academically gifted. I did my first degree at 36. I didn't go to uni until I was 36. I started my PhD 4 years ago. I'm in my 4th year of that, the world's oldest PhD student. Not great genetics. Like I said, we would classify my body type as endomorphic, which means I walk past a donut, my ass gets bigger. That's my genetics. I didn't have incredible talent at anything, but I really came to understand my potential quite early, as in using what I had. And so for me, and this sounds counterintuitive, but for me, mediocrity was a gift, because I knew I would never be good at anything or succeed or be a winner, or I knew that I wouldn't unless I had a massive work ethic and I chose my own path and I was prepared to get uncomfortable, which sounds a bit melodramatic, but yeah, it's just true. So for me, I think mediocrity and pain and suffering, it kind of understood the right way and experienced the right way, can be more of a gift than a curse.
So when you look at that moment in year 8 in the swimming carnival, which could bring up, moments of trauma, or it could trigger you, is it still painful, or you see it as an absolute gift, a gift where the switch was flicked?
Yeah, but for me, it's a gift, Grant. And it sounds a bit bullshitty, doesn't it? Sorry, I don't know if you swear on this show.
We do apologies. Now, mate. We fucking do now.
Yeah, good. Giddy up, buttercup. But I think that, look, this is a hard conversation in 2023 sometimes, but where we grow and where we learn and where we evolve and where we build resilience and understanding and where we become more adaptable is usually in the middle of mess, mayhem, pain, suffering, discomfort, embarrassment. And it's being able to use that as a platform, so before I did the You Project, my show, I did 3 podcasts that didn't work. And we're up to 1,100 plus episodes of my show.
Jeez.
And the first 500 episodes, I lost money. It's not like, oh, geez, you're a gun, Harps. I'm not at all. I've done so many things that I was shit at. But in the middle of being shit, you learn how to deal with failure and setbacks and pain and suffering and unwanted outcomes. And so for me, like, real success is not about what you're creating around you as much as it is about who you are becoming in the middle of it. Because you and I know wealthy, successful, high-profile people who from the outside looking in, their life is Hollywood, it's razzle-dazzle, their success, but from the inside out experience, it's dog shit because they're mentally and emotionally struggling. They're medicated for anxiety and or depression and or sleeplessness, but they're making heaps of dough and people think they're killing it. But in fact, sometimes they're killing themselves. So it's kind of understanding and navigating that dichotomy between our seen world, brand, business, profile, fame, house, stuff, reputation, Instagram, fucking Facebook, all that stuff, navigating that space and the internal world. Because where we do life is in the seen, where we do living is in the unseen.
We're all jumping in with questions.
It's a race to be the next one to talk because it's so exciting. But the remarkable part about your story is the realization or the belief in your mind that you didn't have much to deal with, yet you still made a lot of it. Now, and a lot of people feel like, oh, hang on a second, these are just the cards I've been dealt. I can't do much with them. I may as well give up. I may as well not try because I haven't either been born into a situation where I have a little bit of privilege or opportunity, or I'm not smart, which is one of my beliefs. And so therefore, how does someone who goes, well, I wasn't born into a great life. How do you go from that to actually rising out of that and then moving beyond what you believe is the cards that you've been dealt?
Yeah, great question. So you have to it's like to a degree, we have to be aware of our stories, right? Now, if you're telling yourself story that I'm rubbish, and you believe the story, you're never going to do anything which will take you out of that. But it's every day. Like if you sat down with me, if someone sat down with me and went, right, here's why I'm a failure, or here's why I could never do A, B, or C, I would say, all right, well, what's one thing that you can do today? What's one thing that you could do today for your body or your health or your mind? What's something that I can do to move forward? There's a guy that I think you guys would love. His name is Gregory Smith. He was on Australian Story. He was raised in this horrendous circumstance. He ended up in an orphanage. He had all of these horrible things happen to him. He had a violent, abusive father. He ended up being homeless. He ended up living in the forest in Queensland by himself, literally in the forest, no house or anything, for 10 years. Came out of that. He was basically illiterate. He was near death's door. And this guy was about 40 and close to death. And he ended up living on a beach opposite, or in the scrub and the bush opposite a TAFE college. Ended up going to TAFE, met this lady who helped him, did like a bridging course between whatever and year 12. So he could do year 12, did year 12, and then somehow did really well. This guy is now a senior lecturer at a university, and he was categorized as intellectually handicapped.
Oh, wow.
And I mean, like, people's potential is fucking phenomenal. What gets in the way is not our potential as much as our thinking about it. And so even, me, not good genetics, not a genius, nothing special about me. And I'm not saying that with false humility, right? You go, all right, yeah, cool, Craig. You don't have great genetics. You're not a genius, but what can you do? Can you enroll in a course? Yes. Can you go for a walk today? Could you eat better food today? Could you cut back on coffee? Could you ask better questions? Could you ask questions that put you in a more solution-focused rather than a problem-obsessed headspace? Could you be nicer to people? There's so many things that we can do. It's like, what okay, so you've got these things against you. I get it. My mum's had cancer 3 times. She's been near death's door twice. The last time was 3 years ago. She's 83 years old now. The last time she had chemo for 5 months, she went down to 37 kilos.
Jesus.
And in the middle of that, never, ever complained to me once. She would see me and say, are you eating? You look gaunt. And I'm like, have you seen yourself, love? You know, you look like a fucking chicken with slippers on, right? You know, but this is somebody choosing their mindset.
Yeah.
Because there are lots of people. Here's what we know about life. Good things happen to bad people. Bad things happen to good people. And it's so much, and we're not saying that life's, you know, one way or the other, and we're not saying that, you know, you should never complain or you should never have a bad day. I'm not saying that. I'm saying despite what happens, you still get to choose how you respond. You still get to make a decision. You still get to choose what you're going to do every day. Steps down off soapbox.
Mic drop.
I love that. I'll just bring George in here because George is 21. He is our co-host, our buddy. We are teaching him, well, he's kind of teaching us the ways of the world.
He got hypnotised last episode. You know in those Volvo commercials where they put the dummies in there, the wooden dummies with like that targets on them, and they put them in the crashes, and then they do the crash to see what happens to the dummy? That's pretty much George in this podcast.
That's me. I'm the intern. I'm the work experience kid. Go and do this. Show us how this works. Yeah.
Yeah.
This would be illegal.
Sacrifice yourself, son.
Exactly. This would be
I
illegal.
really have. 7 seasons in and I'm hurting, man. I'm hurting bad.
No, but at New Year's Eve, George didn't come to our house where we were having a small gathering because he preferred to stay at home and he wanted to write out his goals and dreams for the year. And we were blown away because at 21, neither of us were doing that.
No, I could barely tie my shoes at 21. So that was quite profound. So that kind of action, that's right. That's what you did, wasn't it, George? And why did you choose to do that?
Yeah, no, the past sort of few New Year's Eves were absolute rages where I'd go out and drink and party and wake up on the first day of the year and go, far out, my head hurts. Why did I do that? I did something stupid last night. So I thought, yeah, this year I'm going to kick off on a sort of good note and actually write down my goals and, yeah, have a bit more of a wholesome evening. And it sort of set up 2023 in a really good way. It's been fairly positive so far.
Good for you, dude. That's amazing. I mean, you know, I think it's funny how strategic we are about everything except our own life. You know, here's the reality that in a minute, everyone listening to this is going to wake up and we'll be a year down the track, you know, in a metaphoric minute. And it's like, what do you want your life to look like, or your career, or your bank balance, or your body, or your health state, or your marriage, or your state of mind, or your mental health? You know, what do you want to be happening in a year from now? And you're not going to accidentally succeed. And so some sitting down, finding some space, doing some planning, and just like, you know, the funny thing is if I gave you a block of land and $1 million to build a house, we would all spend months planning everything about how we want that house to look and feel and function. But when it comes to our life, we tend not to be that strategic. We just kind of get up today and do what we did yesterday. And so we largely operate unconsciously, keep doing things that don't really work with our body, with our food, with our habits, with our lifestyle, with our behaviors, with our conversations. How many conversations about the same thing do we have with the same people that doesn't work? And then we have the same conversation again. Didn't work the last 100 times, but we keep doing it. So, yeah, that's really stepping into ownership and awareness and conscious kind of creation.
And
So when you write the goals and you have this plan set out and ready to go, I feel like in the past for me, it's worked for maybe 3 months or even less. And then you just get to this point where you sort of find yourself back in a bit of a rut and it can be kind of hard to get out of that. Are there techniques? Are there ways to, you know, see those goals again and kind of get back on track?
George, tell me one thing that you did, that you started, that you stopped, that you wish you hadn't stopped.
good question. I mean, so far, going off the goals that were popped up this year, it's been okay. But in the past, I don't know, there's been a few sort of eating and drinking and gym goals that have definitely slowed down.
Let me just do a hypothetical, right? If I said to you, not that you need to, but mate, train every day for the next 365 days. You don't have to be an Olympic athlete. Don't need to go over the top. Just go to the gym, do 30 to 60 minutes every day of something, 365 days. The chances of you doing that are actually minimal, right? And I don't blame you. But if I said, George, you've got to do 365 days in a row, and if you don't, the next day you're going to drop dead. Guess how many days you would do? 365 days. You'd have no motivation, no self-control problems, no discipline, no commitment problems, because there's a consequence. But what that tells us is, given the right level of motivation, you can pretty much do anything, especially when it comes to just choosing what you do in a day. And one of the mistakes that we make, and this sounds counterintuitive, is that we rely on motivation. And so motivation in the context of this discussion is a sometimes emotion. That's why people, and speaking about metacognition, which I did earlier, thinking about thinking, it's like we go January 1. Why? Because we think January 1's magic. Like January 3, it's too late, we fucked up. December 28, it's too early. December 28, you can't start then. Like we have all of these ways of framing things that actually don't make sense when you put them under the microscope. So the challenge is not to stay motivated. The challenge is to create habits and an operating system that work for you that don't depend on motivation or discipline or self-control or willpower, because nobody can white knuckle it for the next 40 years. So when people say to me, how do you go out where everyone's drinking booze and you don't drink, that you're so mentally tough, or you've got so much, I go, it requires zero discipline or willpower because I don't drink, right? I train every day of my life. Same. Why? Because it's just my normal operating system. It's not a big deal. Just like I clean my teeth every day. I don't need a round of applause or a trophy. It's the same. It's how we think about things. When you think moving your body every day is a big deal and you need a reward or recognition or a round of applause, that's the problem. Your body actually needs to be moved every day.
So what about, okay, not making this an intervention for Grant, but everybody looking into Grant. No. So Grant has, worked and worked through basically all his goals that he had set out to achieve from being very young. Now he's at a point where, and feel free to take over at any stage here.
Can we use my big boy words?
Now he's at a point where he's like, what do I do next? What will give me enjoyment into the future?
Well, sort of elaborate a little further, I think being a smaller boy who was lost in the crowd, living at home with a single mom, dad was 2 states away, moved into state, so I wasn't aware of AFL. I was living in Victoria. I didn't fit in. I didn't know any AFL players. I couldn't communicate, with everyone in the playground. So I think I felt very lost and unseen. And I think my entire career has probably just been a quest to be seen, heard, validated, and to have a voice. And I think that's been great. And I've had a remarkable opportunity. And I've got to the top. I won a gold Logie. However, I think as you get a little bit older and perhaps reaching those goals, I feel like I'm struggling with what do I do now? But I'm also losing a little bit of the narcissism that I needed to have to grow in my career. The narcissism that you need to push a little harder than the bloke next to you. The narcissism you kind of need to fight a little harder to climb each rung of the ladder. That's stripped away. I don't kind of have any of those drivers anymore. So therefore I'm kind of lacking in direction and knowing what to do next. So I'm caught between, do I wait or do I push to try and find what it is? It's a scary proposition.
Yeah. Do I wait or do I create?
Yeah.
Do I open? But also I think, we're getting philosophical, but it's cool. there was a time where, I had 500 trainers that worked for me over the years. And at one stage when I was in my 30s, I had 5 different businesses, 100 staff, like things were going great. Everything was making money. I was writing for the Herald Sun. I was working in radio. I was writing books. I was doing all this cool shit. But in the middle of that, I still was not I wasn't overly happy, which sounds weird. But I think for me anyway, I used to be very self-focused, like, and I'm an only child, and I was all about building brand and business, and nothing wrong with any of that. But and I was an insecure bodybuilder. All I wanted to be was huge and all that. And then I ended up just being a bigger, more insecure version of, what I was when I was younger. But for me, it's like the gift is in having a purpose bigger than me. And it sounds bullshit, but I genuinely love and passionate about helping people understand their potential and meeting people who they're getting in their own way, but they don't know it, and helping them unlock that. And, and I think also it's not so much, you get to a point, Grant, I don't know if you're there or not, but where it's not so much about what you're doing, creating, but who you're becoming and what you're like for others to be around. Like I used to have a guy work for me called Sam Wood, who went on The Bachelor. He was one of my trainers.
Yep.
Then we opened a business kids gym together called Gecko, and he sold one of his businesses recently for, I think it was 50 million or something.
Jesus.
And something like that. It's ridiculous. But my overwhelming feeling towards Sam, who I met when I was doing a lecture in Ballarat, he was a student, said, I want to come and work with you. And I went, well, you better move from, my overwhelming feeling is happiness for him. And there's nothing in me going, fuck, Sam, what did it? I'm happy that he's doing that. And I think that as long as, and we spoke about this morning, but as long as you get your sense of self and self-worth from what you do, you're always going to be insecure because that stuff can disappear. And it's trying to figure out who you are beyond your job or your brand or your gold logie, or in my case, your biceps or your gyms or whatever it is, to try to figure out, like, beyond all of that stuff, what are my core values? It's like we do this deep dive sometimes in some of my workshops where we go, what are your core values? And I tell you what, they're not money. Your core values aren't money and Facebook or Instagram recognition or even podcast numbers. It's all good. But ultimately our values are things like, love and compassion and family and connection and all of those kind of deeper, more emotional, perhaps spiritual, sociological, psychological things. And when we get really clear about our values and then we build a life around those values, now we're living a life in alignment, But when we're all about, because when we grow up, I think success, we're taught, is about what you have and what you earn and what you drive and where you live and what people think of you.
Yep.
And there's nothing wrong with any of that, but I think there's a lot more.
It doesn't bring you happiness, any of that stuff, really, does it?
No, not at all. And look, my career's never been about money. It's never been a factor in any of the decisions that I've ever made. It is, would I be good in this role? Would I enjoy this role? Could I make a difference in this role? Could I ensure that everyone around me had a great time while we did it? They were always my driving factors. But I think there's this period of stillness now at the moment, which I probably should never underestimate the importance of it, because having lived a hectic, high-profile life, now sitting in, say, 2 years without any work is frightening when you've been working since you were 16, right? And you've been working like at a frantic pace. However, I kind of know that there is a lesson in this stillness, and then there is a rebuilding where I go, my whole identity was who I was as a professional. That's where I stacked all of my chips. I had to be the best at what I did, and I had to do a great job, and I had to be a wonderful, trustworthy employee. I had to deliver for the viewers who are expecting something fun and entertaining and something to take their mind off their troubles. And I made myself that person, but my entire self-worth was built in that. And now there is no work. You go, fuck. You're forced to have a look and go, well, shit, who am I? What am I? What do I have to offer? Where is my heart now? What are my interests and hobbies? What lights the fire in my belly? And it isn't what it used to be. You know what I mean? It's not what it used to be, but I I'm fascinated and equally terrified by the prospect of trying to figure out what that next thing is.
I think the next thing for you is exciting. And if I was the Buddha, whom I clearly am not, I would tell you to sit in that stillness and sit in that uncertainty and sit in that unknowing and lean into that discomfort, because that's where you'll learn the most about you. Don't distract yourself. Don't start another thing just to start another thing. You know, the things will
That's
come.
a
And you'll do
temptation.
more.
That's a big temptation of going, I have to build it. I have to make it. If you've been solely responsible for creating most of your career with your bare hands, the temptation is, you're right. Fuck, I don't know what to do, so I'll do that and that and that and that. See which one that flies. But yeah, that is, I struggle with that.
I think the challenge moving forward for all of us is that, you know, to navigate the world, the practical world, business, career for you. I'm not saying don't ever go work in telly. You're a fucking champion at that. So you should, if that's something you want to do, you truly are gifted. So it's not about not doing it. It's about not letting that define you and having a, you know, a component of who you are, or a version of who you are that's much bigger than the persona. So what we see on the TV, it's not that it's not authentic, but that's the persona. That's you doing a role, being the host, being the entertainer, bringing it all together. That's you being, you know, but then away from that, you don't talk like that. You don't behave like that. That's not how you talk with your family. And it's being able to be authentically you. And I think whatever spirituality means is opening that door. And I'm not talking about religion, but like for me, like I know that I've got to have a bigger purpose than me in my life, or I'm a prick, or I can be a prick. And by that, I just mean self-centered and selfish. And I know the more I help people within reason, you can't be an emotional doormat, but the more that I help people genuinely, not just something to say on a podcast, but the more that I like me and the better that I am. And I think it's marrying that, you know, I'm still got, you know, commercial ambitions. I still do corporate speaking. I still make pretty good dough and all of that. But again, there's much more to me than my job. And I think that's the challenge.
I think you're right. I think you're absolutely right.
Do you find that social media gets in the road of people's, I don't know, like I just feel sometimes
It
like,
feels like it's the biggest threat to human happiness.
Yeah.
in some regards, but then I look at like accounts like yours, Craig, where you've got, you know, the whiteboard messages and things, you know, there are uplifting pages that you can follow. However, when people sit there and look at social media, and I know that, you know, some of us in this room do it.
Well,
and
if you're watching on YouTube, you'll see the stink eye that she just gives me
and
as
the
she says
thumb.
that.
Some of us, you know, we sit there and we flick through and we go far out. You know, I'm really behind, and you compare, and I just feel like that robs you sometimes of happiness. Do you find that?
Gratitude of what you currently have.
Yeah.
So, I mean, at its most fundamental level, for me, social media is a tool. That's it. If I didn't do what I do, I would not be on social media at all. I use social media. I'm very grateful for it. It allows me to share thoughts and ideas and stories, allows me to build a platform and an audience. Am I still insecure? Do I still look at shit that I shouldn't and go, oh, please love me? What? I still do that a bit. But for me, primarily, that the question with whether or not it's money or booze or social media is not, is it good or bad? It's what's your relationship with it, because your relationship with it will determine its impact on you. So I use it primarily, like I don't post personal stuff ever. I just post stuff that I think is going to be potentially of some value to people, thought, an idea, a strategy, a story, something a bit, you know, maybe mildly amusing. And in the hope that it's going to help someone. But yeah, for me, I think social media is fucking awesome used the right way, and a toxic addiction used the wrong way.
What about George sending his dick pics? What do you think of those?
Yeah, I like those. I wish it was better light though. You know what I mean? It's really, hey, stand up straight, son. Let me see what you're working with.
I actually invested in a big softie, Craig, and I'm going to sort of angle it a bit more towards it next time.
Is that
And I love
is
how
that-
smoothly you just got on board with that, George. You definitely could work in the media. Well done. and nobody batted an eyelid.
Oh,
Hey, but George, put your cock away now. That's plenty.
George,
all right?
did you refer to your genitals as the big softy then? Is that what just happened?
Oh my God.
Exactly. You got to embrace what you've got and give it a name.
Oh, poor George.
Craig, you're an addiction specialist. When does something cross over from being something that consumes you a little bit to becoming an addiction? What are the signs we need to look for? And we all have addictions in our life, whether they be social media or coffee or whatever.
Big softy.
Big softies. Sending dick
Yeah,
pics.
I'm just going to say up front, I'm not a specialist, but I have worked with an addiction treatment facility for a few years. But for people who are actual gurus, they're going to go, he's not. But my thoughts are these. So you can literally get addicted to anything. You can get addicted to attention. You can get addicted to screens. You can get addicted to heroin. You can get addicted to sex. It's essentially when you're out of control, when you can't stop. And interestingly, the addiction, whether or not it's booze, gambling, sex, heroin, dope, cigarettes, chocolate, screens, the addiction is the same. The addiction is the biochemical event in the brain, which is dopamine. So dopamine's that happy hormone that gets us focused, motivated, in the zone. It makes us fucking feel great. And so for people who love cigarettes, it produces dopamine. People who love porn, it does that. People who love the bet, the punt, it does that. For people who love chocolate, it does that. So the generally speaking, the addiction is the same thing. It lights up our brain. It's the pathway that varies, but it's tough, and addiction is on a scale. And I've worked with many people who have really, really been at the very scary end of addiction. And it's, obviously it's no revelation to say it destroys lives. But when do you know when maybe you've got a problem? When you start bullshitting yourself, when you start bullshitting others, when you start doing things that deep down, this is unhealthy, this is destructive, and you're now lying about it. There's actually, I don't know if this is interesting, but there's a thing called athletica nervosa, and it's essentially an addiction to exercise. Now, when I was a young fat kid, I then became the overly crazy exercising 15, 16, 17-year-old kid. I pretty much ruptured some ligaments in my ankle playing footy, and I used to run 365 days of the year, and I was a complete addict. And I had to go to the doctor, and they taped up my ankle, and they said, no, weight bearing for 2 weeks, crutches, the whole shooting match. You won't be able to run for like 4 to 6 weeks. So don't even think about it. The first day after my injury, I climbed out my window at home in Latrobe Valley, and I went for a run in excruciating pain because I couldn't stop. I couldn't stop.
Wow.
And this is how addicted I was to running. I figured out, this is embarrassing, but it's true. I figured out that if I ran with my right foot, which was the injured one, in the gutter, so it was turned, my outside of my foot was down, which is called supination. And if it rolls in, it's called pronation. If my foot was in a supine position, it was only about a 4 out of 10 pain. But if I ran normally, it was an 11 out of 10 pain. So I ran for weeks at night when my parents didn't know, in the dark, with my foot in a gutter, so I could keep running. That's addiction. Jesus. And I knew that it was crazy. I couldn't stop.
Yeah, right. So how did you overcome that?
So I think I'd like to say I really overcame that quickly. I didn't, like I was so obsessed because I went from being this, this dysfunctional, fat, unhealthy, unfit, kind of socially a little bit out of it, to being a fit, strong, mildly popular kid. And a lot of that, and when that thing that takes you there, that gives you that recognition, and I started doing okay at sports, not because I was a great athlete, but because I trained all the time. And I started to get a few runs on the board, and I started to get much better results all round, from sport to social to academic. And then you associate that with this thing that you do. You don't want that thing that you do to go away. And then I kind of transferred it, Shezzy, over time from running to bodybuilding. And then I just became a crazy obsessed, ego-driven, insecure, please love me, please like me, please be attracted to me, whatever. And I would say until I was, honestly, I would like to say earlier, but truly I would say till I was about early 30s. And by this stage, I was an exercise scientist. I owned gyms. I was, all this shit. But I still didn't have my own shit together. I would say maybe even 35 before I really figured out my relationship with my body. I had body dysmorphia. Even if I looked good, I thought I looked shit. I had obsessive compulsive issues around food. I would lie about food. I would tell people to eat one thing, I would eat another, and then I would pretend that I didn't. It's addiction comes in lots of forms. But
Craig, I was
eventually,
just going to say,
I kind of just figured it out and went, I'm full of shit, and I owned up and I just stepped up.
a lot of people, I'd be speaking for a lot of people who listen to this podcast and maybe even on this podcast, but personally, I really want to get into better shape. I want to go to the gym. I want to eat better. But hearing you say that, once you got to that ultimate body, you still had these thoughts of I'm not perfect, or I'm not where I want to be, or it's not great. How do you move on from there? How do you, it's kind of scary to think that you'll get to your goal, but you might not actually be satisfied.
Yeah, that's a great question. So there's the thing that we think we want. What we think we want is an awesome body, in my case. What I really wanted was to be lovable. What I really wanted was approval and connection and people to notice me. What I really wanted was to feel like I belonged to something. And so what I tried to do, and many people try to do, George, is I tried to resolve emotional and psychological and perhaps spiritual issues with a physical solution, right? Now, because I was the fat kid, my name at school was Jumbo, by the way. Parents call me Jumbo, teachers call me Jumbo, and kids call me Jumbo. People didn't call me Craig. And I wasn't a bit out of shape. I was fucking huge. I was obese, right? So that doesn't go away quick. So I desperately wanted approval. And, I'm in my 50s now, well in my 50s, and that doesn't always go away. I still feel that fat kid, I love that fat kid. But it's I think in our culture, we try and resolve psychological and emotional and perhaps sociological issues with abs or biceps or bigger lips or a prettier face or less wrinkles but they're internal things that we're not addressing. I've literally worked with some of the most gorgeous people, men and women, physically gorgeous people, models, TV people, who are fucking stunning.
Thank you, mate. I appreciate that.
Mainly Grant, and of all the female models I've worked with, and
got nice boobs.
But also at the same time, some of them horribly insecure despite being gorgeous.
Most of them, yeah.
Horribly, like more insecure than the average person.
Yeah,
and so that goes to tell you. That one doesn't equal the other. You think about also all the famous, like one that springs to mind while I'm talking is Robin Williams,
Yeah.
R.I.P. Such a beautiful, hilarious, talented, creative genius who so many people loved, looked up to, respected, completely miserable.
He could make everyone else feel happy except himself.
Yep.
Which,
so sad.
What a tortured situation. And look, we've all got... we've all got moments in our life like those words when they, so unfortunately and tragically called you Jumbo. That sticks and you remember that, and that shapes the personality of who you become. We've all had moments in time where someone's called us something in the schoolyard. Maybe our family viewed us a certain way. Maybe something happened where we failed and no one will let it go. So you end up thinking that all you do is fail. We've all got triggers. We've all got moments in time that are imprinted in us that shape us. How do we reset those triggers? How do we reset those moments so they don't overwhelm us, overpower us, or steer us towards these things that we think we want but won't ultimately actually make us any different?
Yeah, that's a good question. So how we change the way we think, there's no 3-step plan, by the way, but this is my take on it. So a lot of us have got pretty crappy self-esteem. A lot of us have got self-limiting beliefs, doubt, imposter syndrome, overthinking, fill in the blank, right? That's not some people. That's most people on some level at some stage. The way that we change the way that we think and our level of expectation and our understanding of our own potential is typically by doing things that we haven't done, by actually having new experiences. Sitting on the couch trying to think yourself into a different mindset usually is just going to produce some kind of despair or anxiety. But when, for example, now I don't know if you've ever done this, Shezzy, but it's just an example. If Shezzy came to me and went, Harps, I've never done, a fun run. Have you ever done a fun run, by the way?
No, because it's a lie to start with. There's nothing fun about
they're
running.
ironically named, yeah. They should be called.
I'm pretty dangerous when I'm like moving at rapid speed. I'll just be honest. There's arms and legs and shit flying everywhere.
We've never, no.
Well, not shit, but body bits.
It's a spectacle.
Yeah.
So I've had lots of people come to me over the years and go, I want to get in shape, whatever, all the normal stuff. And eventually, over some weeks or months, I go, listen, why don't you train for a 10K fun run? You're getting in shape. Might be good to have a focus, or it might be some other event. And people are like, now, despite the fact that I understand exercise physiology and adaptation and all that sporting stuff really well, I can see that they think there's no way they could do that. The quick version is I train them, they do a 10K run, and all of a sudden their mind explodes with, oh my God, what else can I do? Oh my God, I did. Now this door opens in their brain where they realize their limitation is not their ability or genetics so much as it is their thinking about their genetics and their ability.
Yeah.
Right. So there's a couple of things where we can improve self-confidence and open our mind a bit to doing, thinking, creating bigger and better. Like, for example, when I wrote my first book, everyone that I looked up to said, you probably won't get it published because you're not an author. I'm like, well, that's fucking stupid psychology, because surely every author wrote a first book.
Yeah.
But then by the time I wrote my third book, everyone's like, so what's your fourth book going to be about? Right. I'm the same guy. It's just that I think different and they think differently about me. But I will say this, I did a gig a few weeks ago where I was talking to a really big audience. And this is part of that fat kid living on. And I'm standing at the side of the room at Crown, and there's a dude up the front going, ladies and gentlemen, please make welcome, blah, 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 blah. And they're introducing me, and I'm looking at this audience. Now, I've done presentations thousands of times, and part of me is like, my brain is like, yep, this is what I do. I'm good at this. I get paid for this. I've done this a million times. But also at the same time, I feel like a fraud. I feel like this is the day everyone discovers you're actually shit and you've been very lucky, right? And so there's this ability for us to simultaneously know that we're good at something while feeling not good enough.
Yeah.
One is emotional, one is psychological or cognitive.
I definitely.
So those things can coexist,
So trying to override that, because in some people it's very strong, that self-limiting beliefs, that, that restrictive kind of self-talk, trying to overcome that. Your suggestion is to set yourself a goal and achieve that. No matter how small. Like a 10K fun run, for me would be so easy.
That feels big.
Really.
Yeah.
No, it'd be so easy. But, I run every day.
I mean, yes and no, but I wouldn't say I'd say, Shezzy, let's go for a 5K walk jog. And we might walk 4Ks and jog a K, but that's where we start.
Yeah.
So we build up, but also here's an idea. Oh, I'm really scared of that, but it's okay. Like, my analogy is this. If you want to become a black belt in, say, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, which is one of the hardest martial arts, typically takes someone 10 years to get a black belt, right? So where you start is you become a white belt and you go into the dojo and you get the shit beat out of you and you get strangled and choked and bruised and you got no skills and everyone manhandles you or woman handles you and you get smashed. And then over time, you develop, you build awareness and competence and strength and skill. And eventually one day, maybe you're a yellow belt, green belt, purple belt, blue belt, brown belt, or black belt, right? But you can't become a black belt without getting strangled and choked and kicked in the dick. That's where you start, right? And you've got to be okay with it. You go, it's like my first 50 corporate gigs were somewhere between complete shit and average. But you can't become exceptional without being first not very good. That's how we develop mastery. So like Grant, if you look back at the first time you're in front of a camera versus you accepting your gold logie, I bet there was a chasm.
Yeah, there was a lot less crying in my first ever appearance on camera. But it's I sounded like an 8-year-old girl when I was talking on camera. Yeah. You know, my voice hadn't broken. You know, I looked so young. I was pretending to be a man while not looking like one. Yeah, you do come a long way. But you're right. The important thing is to start. Is to just start.
Just post it. Wait. Our daughter sang a song which she hates, but she was about 7. She sang a song, Just Post It, which was so random.
She's made it up on the spot, just singing into the phone.
Yeah, and then
just post it now, put it now.
Put it up on YouTube. She had a little channel on YouTube, and she now can't watch it because she cringes, but we've tried to teach her about, footprint, it's out there, it's the media print, but we do try to say that, just post it.
We sing it to ourselves because it's not about being on social media, but it's about, we have a tendency to be perfectionists, right? So we go, well, I don't have anything good to say, or how do I word this thing that I'm going to put out there because this represents me and who I am, and you get so caught up in your head, and then all we do is to go, post it now, like fucking just do it. You know what I mean? Because it's easy to make things way more complex than they need to be and overthink.
I love it when I come on someone's show, George, and I open the swearing door and they both come through.
Well,
I feel like
it's potent at the moment, isn't it?
I feel like there've been more fucks in this episode than any other, and I couldn't be prouder.
How many podcasts have you done today?
Only 3.
3.
I did
only 3.
I know. Well,
far out.
it is what it is.
If you had one piece of advice for someone, for anyone, for everyone, what would it be? Because I know you're full of. I'm going to call you Guru Harps.
No,
you're our new Guru
really.
Harps.
I mean, like a bunch of things, but let me say one thing. Like, I think what's really interesting is the thing that we most avoid is discomfort, right? We don't want to be physically, mentally, emotionally uncomfortable. And so we always try to, and I'm generalizing, not everyone and not all the time, but we are really obsessed in our culture with quick fixes, with convenience, with familiarity, with predictability, and with comfort. But when we're willing to, in an intelligent, strategic way, lean into the discomfort, the uncertainty, the unfamiliarity, and see what lives there, right? When I started, like I said, I did 3 podcasts that didn't work. My podcast, the U Project, I lost money for the first 600 episodes. I built a $40,000 studio at home that I'm sitting in. I lost money for 3 years, right? But I kind of thought it might work eventually. When I wrote my first book, I wrote about 30 drafts. When I started my PhD, I literally sat at Monash University. It's called Brain Park, the neuroscience lab. I was literally 30 years older than all the other PhD students. I felt so fucking wildly uncomfortable and out of place. And I'm just like, well, it'll pass. Like, this is the thing, is that life is messy and unfair and uncomfortable. And if you're always trying to stay in that bubble, you actually disadvantage yourself. So I think choosing a bit of uncertainty and a bit of discomfort sometimes in an intelligent way, it is amazingly cathartic, transformational, and ironically empowering.
What is that human instinct that prevents us from doing it? It's a protection from rejection, embarrassment, humiliation, fear of failure. Are these all ancient parts of our personality traits, or are they new?
That's ancient. That is, so we've been around, give or take, depending on which research you look at, but about 300,000 years, modern man. And for nearly all of our evolutionary timeline, we didn't live like we currently live. Like we had all of these very real threats, with saber-toothed tigers and living in the whatever. And, even now when you get certain diseases, that if you got an infection a couple of 100 years ago in your fingernail, that could quite possibly kill you because there were no antibiotics. There were no drugs to deal with that. But our brain is literally a kind of a threat detection thing. And, it's really kind of, we have such convenience and such comfort now that I think we've kind of deprogrammed ourselves. Ironically, we talk a lot in our culture about resilience at the moment. But I think the way that we live actually produces the opposite of resilience. And I read something today that said, this is not very good podcasting, but let me see if I can just quickly find it. It was talking about the amount of, here we go. This is what on news.com. Australian workers suffered a higher level of burnout at work compared to anywhere else in the world. 62%, that's 2 in 3 of Australian employees were experiencing burnout.
What?
And so I was thinking about that, and I mean this, I'm not throwing anyone under the bus. I'm not being critical. And I'm thinking, so we're the highest in the world, but think about some of the other countries in the world, like what they're going through right now. I mean, think of the Ukraine, think of Turkey, think of a whole bunch of countries. Think of people in North Korea, think of people in China, and we have the worst. Then you think, well, is it about the environment and situation, or is it about us in the middle of it? And the thing is that if you don't have resilience, you're going to be, on a regular basis, you're going to be anxious, you're going to be stressed, and of course, anxiety is, it's unavoidable in that it's always going to be part of our culture. But we also need to realize that burnout as an experience, or anxiety as an experience, it's a personal response, which is why we could have 2 people in the same situation. One is anxious, one is not anxious, or one is scared and one is comfortable, or 5 people and one finds something terrifying, someone else finds the same thing interesting, someone finds it a lesson, and whatever, and it's not about what's going on only. It's about how we deal with what's going on. So life is unfair and messy, and in the middle of it is us. So that's why I think, in answer to your question, I'm sorry for being so long-winded, Shezzy, but being able to make yourself, don't chase an easy life, build a stronger you. Because when you are a stronger, more adaptable, capable, resilient you, then life is apparently easier.
I fully subscribe to that, and often I will send my kids to school with no school bag, sometimes no lunchbox.
No lunch. Get out there and find a saber-toothed tiger and rip it apart with your jaws, you
Purely
little shits.
just to build resilience.
No, we've forgotten to put in their bags in the car.
Yeah, but I tell them that it's to build resilience. And they're like, thanks, Mum. Tomorrow can I wear shoes? No, sorry. I hope docs aren't listening. Look, I feel like, I have. I feel like I've had the world's best counselling sessions today.
The good news is there's a back catalogue of how many episodes of the U Project? How many?
There's a few. Maybe don't listen to the first 100. I think that was shit.
And the new podcast, which starts, your new one, which starts today?
As we record this, it starts tomorrow, which is the 15th.
Yep.
And that is just called Life. And that's just a little daily installment of coaching. It's just me talking about one idea or one thought that might help you do life a little bit better.
And I like it because it's bite-sized. You're trying to keep it around sort of 8 minutes or so. So we're all living busy lives, easily to consume in that quick trip to the school to drop the kids off or to bringing them back, or on the way to get a coffee, or if you're walking around the block, or whatever it is that you're trying to do to take that step forward in your life, to try and move the bar just that little bit. And as you said, Craig, it doesn't need to be in massive chunks. You don't need to be shooting for the moon when you're making personal change. It's just a slight step in front of the other foot is all you need to do to make a big, lasting change.
Look at you. You could do my job. I could fuck off. You're good at that.
Thank God. And you can see me. I'm going to be opening up a gym called the Lizard Gym next week. And,
Pressed Lizard.
The Pressed Lizard, where, don't bring your kids to that one.
Yeah, my new podcast, Go Hard or Go Home, you fuckers. Yeah, that's good.
It's been a pleasure, mate. Thanks for
It has been so good.
Thank you,
sharing your
Craig.
time with us, mate. We know you're busy. We loved it.
Thanks, everyone. Love your guts.
Yeah, do you get to go for a motorbike ride now?
I'm going to ride to the gym and lift heavy shit, so it's win-win, really.
Yeah.
Well, so are we, aren't we?
Yep. I'm going to go riding by myself and leave all my family members behind, which I do semi-regularly.
Where do you guys live? I should have asked that earlier.
We live on the outskirts of Bathurst, so in regional New South Wales.
Yeah.
Of course you do.
Yeah.
Of course you do.
And we live
How far is that from Sydney?
2.5 hours.
Yeah, depends who's driving.
Cool.
Yeah, Shezzy's a Bathurst girl, so we've got family here, and it's a nice little sort of quiet part of the world, and we got a little farm, little hobby farm that we're on, so it's a nice little upbringing.
We did live in the centre of Sydney.
In Chinatown.
In Chinatown. And what we didn't realise was that we never turned off. So we travelled all the time, and then you'd come home and you'd stay for the weekend, and you'd hear sirens, you'd hear people yelling,
Trains.
And
People getting stabbed.
yeah,
You hear it.
it was
You
a
hear
lot.
it all.
Wow.
You know, protesting, and it was just this constant noise. And we wondered why Grant kept having this adrenal gland burnout, just this constant, tapping out of energy. And we kind of thought we needed a bit of a sea change, and we came out to a farm and 28 acres, and Grant just sits on his tractor or his mower when he needs to, get back to nature. Doesn't talk to anyone.
Most of my time just running from the brown snakes and the tiger snakes. So
Yeah, fuck that. You can have those. You're braver than me, mate. I have the odd, huntsman, and that's it. I'm out.
you'd love it out here. I saw one yesterday, actually. I took my daughter for a ride on the motorbike. She's 2. She loves it. She likes going on the brum-brums. And nearly ran over a brown snake. So I thought that was a nice little wake-up call. That gets the heart rate running, because you've only got about 25 minutes to live if those things bite you. So it's high consequences.
You can have that. You can keep that all to yourself. Hey, thanks for giving me the opportunity to be on your show. I appreciate it.
Pleasure.
No, thank you.
Take care, my
Got a
friend.
lot out of it.
All the very best.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. See you, George. Good job, George.
Nice meeting you. Oh, thank you. I did absolutely nothing. I just got free therapy.
Don't undersell yourself. That's Grant's job.
Thank you,
As
mate.
well.
Thanks, Craig. Bye.
See you guys.
Bit of fun, hey?
Do you know?
You know how Craig had like 5 or 3 different podcast names before he got to this one? Maybe we should call our next podcast Free Therapy with Grant and Chezzy Denya.
Yeah. That's not
Well,
bad.
we need the therapy.
Yeah, what if we're on the receiving end of that therapy? Is that okay? And this is part of the fun of this podcast, is sometimes we get guests on and they sort of help us through our problems, but hopefully there's bits that you can derive from it for you in your lives as well. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
absolutely.
So sort of let us be the fuck-ups and you can benefit from it.
Well, there's that swear word again.
But he's good though, isn't he?
He is good.
Absolutely incredible.
Yeah, he's very straight to the point. And when you listen to some of his, podcasts, I just like it how he says that we get in our own road.
We do. And
And it's a mindset thing,
and hope you've enjoyed. There was a few swears in there. But no more than normal, I don't think, was it?
That's a few more, but that's okay. We
I
can.
was just trying to make him feel comfortable by swearing with him. Because that's, I'm
you
a
don't need
people
to
pleaser.
apologise.
That's what I do.
No, it was really good. Yep. And you can also, we didn't really give him much of a plug, did we? But you can also follow him on Instagram. He's got an Instagram handle.
Well, you
which
mentioned
I
that
have to
before
look
with
up.
these sort of life-affirming messages.
Yeah, I really like it. It's called Whiteboard. I'll have to get the actual name of it. Just talk amongst yourselves.
I'll tell you what, it's always these episodes, though, that make me go, holy smokes, I think this is my favourite chat we've ever had. Like, we had Gus Wallen that time.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
I wasn't going to be able to make it, but it ended up being one of the most important chats I've ever had. And today, not going to lie, I did very minimal research, had to listen to one of the podcasts, but didn't expect half the shit that sort of came out of today. So
You're right.
a lot to take away from it.
Potty mouth. Are you right over there, mate? Bloody hell. Jesus.
No,
He has rubbed off on you.
yes, whiteboard
yeah.
lessons on Instagram.
Now, just quickly, if I click my fingers, are you going to like fall asleep and go back into a trance after what happened with your, what's that called again, that skill?
No, but because we recorded the entire session that we're not meant to broadcast, it's on my laptop and I'm sort of half tempted to play that and see if it can hypnotize me again. Because I was a good bloke back then.
No, because what happens if you can't come out of it? Like if you just
don't put yourself under, you might not ever, you return. You might need someone. No, don't do it on your own.
Yeah, because did you watch?
Have you watched the episode back though?
Yeah.
Oh, it was the craziest thing ever. Like, I didn't know I said half of that stuff, and watching it back, it didn't feel like me, but at the same time, it was so random. It got a lot of traction, that episode.
Did you see how blissed out you were?
I was in a really good spot. That's why I'm tempted to go and watch the video.
That was so funny. I listened to it again the other day and I was cracking up, like just with the sound of music talking about, well, there's no lighting. The lighting was shit.
What about your own critique of your own performance in Jesus Christ Superstar?
The Rang of Jesus, yeah. Actually, I had the director of that show reach out and said it was a perfect casting choice. Thank you very much.
Oh, no, really? Oh, no.
I've had people who I didn't know listen to this podcast just talk to me about that one episode.
Yes.
Because it was so funny, mate.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
I got my parents to watch it the other day and their mouths were just open and, yeah, it was really, really, really good.
It was so much
Yeah.
funny. But I'm just wondering, is there any lingering effects? Like if a musical came on the television, would you just start shouting and abuse at the television? Like what? Is there anything that you've noticed that's different?
Oh, apart from that time I was in the office and someone said Grant and Shezzy and I had a wet willy go into my ear. No, nothing else. As soon as he snapped me out of it, I was completely back to earth. And in that 10-second countdown when he said, you're going to have a goal, you're going to have something to strive towards, since then, it's been smooth sailing. So it was a wild experience. I recommend it to anyone who can actually go under.
Yeah, I really liked that you did that at the end. I thought that was very profound and hopefully will shape you in a really nice way in the future. But how ludicrous to think that just by saying our names that you what was the word?
Top fun.
Top fun. We'd say top fun. And you thought, even though we're in New South Wales, you're in Queensland, that we were genuinely wet willing your ear.
Yeah.
Crazy. And you could actually feel the spit on the finger in your ear. It was such a real feeling. I don't know how else to explain it. It was
It's incredible that
properly real.
It's incredible that he could do that over Zoom and in 15 minutes.
This is why you reckon no wonder hypnotism is good for, we're talking about habits before and addictions, for rewiring your brain. Because I saw how firmly you believed that that's what we were doing. So if someone has the ability, if maybe you're addicted to smoking or whatever and you get hypnotized, I can kind of see how that would stick.
Yeah, for sure. And just like back on what we've been speaking about this episode, I'm not too sure if you get the feedback enough, but I certainly hear it that we all allow ourselves to be so open and vulnerable and to really let it all out there, which is a frightening thing to do. I definitely don't do it as much as you two, and I've done it a couple of times and it feels great and it helps people. But you two do such a great job of that, and I think that's what really makes this podcast super special. So just want to let you know that thank you for that because it helps me too.
Oh, you've had some beautiful shares as well. But, we've lived quite a life. We're a lot older than you. You're 21. You've only just found your dick. So, we've got a lot of experience to draw on. You know what I mean? You haven't made as many stuff-ups yet. So
Can I actually share that next episode about the day I found my dick a couple of weeks ago?
Righto, brother. You take care, all right?
Oh, we love
you
doing
guys.
this with you,
Love you too.
George.
Talk to you soon.
Bye.
Thanks for listening, everyone.
Thanks
we'll catch
for
you next time on
listening.
It's All True.
It's All True, the podcast with Grant and Shezzy Denya.
Bye bye.